Welcome to a day in the life of DC, 5 weeks out from my very first show. Admittingly, I don't share a lot of my daily routine on social media. I'm rather introverted in nature, but these are the memories I wish I could more vividly recall after the season is over. So let's dive in, and yes, it is 4 a.m. in the morning. If you've prepped before, you know the body clock has some very interesting adaptations, a greater proclivity for the morning, but I do enjoy this downtime as a bit of a soft launch for the day. Also, considering I coach myself, I use this time to analyze my daily data and ensure I'm on track with my conditioning checkpoints. I run my own check-ins. I use the same systems I've built to coach my athletes, which helps me to remain objective. But that being said, everyone can benefit from an extra set of eyes. I'm fortunate to have my beautiful partner Nicole as a soundboard, and Brandon and I catch up each week to discuss our own respective preps. Next up, I moved downstairs to make a gen matcha. For any of you tea lovers, it's Japanese brown rice green tea and has like a roasted, nutty flavor. I find it helps with my digestion, and I don't typically consume my first meal until a few hours upon waking up. I then move on to some AM journaling. I often analogize to my athletes that contest preparation is like water over stone. The starter prep should be very manageable, virtually no wear and tear, but repeated exposure to the diet condition does become increasingly corrosive in nature. Journaling just really enables me to get my thoughts to paper, better process my emotions, and practice daily gratitude. Honestly, it's not for everyone, but for me it's been an invaluable tool for stress management. After this, it's time for the morning walk to pick up the two most important C's to a bodybuilder: coffee and carbs. This walk is definitely the highlight of my morning. It enables me to get some fresh air, some vitamin D, and a good chunk of my steps done nice and early. It's also a refeed day, so let's get stepping. But first, a quick shout out to our little buddy boy who's motorhoming across Australia with Nicole's parents. He is usually the one most excited about our morning walk. Alright, coffee and carbs acquired, but before we consume, it's time for check-in photos. Rather flat this AM at 82.4 kgs after multiple low days, but as we say, we get flat to get lean, we get full to look lean. Alright, meal 1 is going down. It is protein oats. No surprise here, as sleep is the time machine to oats in the AM. I don't typically train until around 11 AM, so it makes sense to have slower digesting fibrous carbs first up in the morning for better nutrient timing. I also add YoPro to both this and my post-training meal as a means of ensuring that I consume adequate dairy, and strawberries as the fruit of choice for its low calorie density. And of course, we've got some cinnamon and some salt as the condiment of choice. Despite following a fixed meal plan to ensure precision, I do preload my days of food into MyFitnessPal as a means of reducing decision fatigue, and I micro-adjust quantities as needed. Next up, we are moving on to the first block of athlete check-ins. I'm a coach above all else, which means I've needed to ensure that my own competitive goals don't interrupt the ability for me to remain altruistic and provide the highest quality service to my athletes. Something I honestly pride myself on throughout this prep, which I attribute to my very structured calendar alongside the systems I've built for athlete tracking and management. I was also very diligent to map out the calendar year and ensure a less invasive runway of athletes competing. With the first block of check-ins complete, we move on to the pre-workout meal. We've got YoPro yogurt and banana alongside a nut bar, mostly comprising of protein and carbohydrates within this meal. However, I don't mind a small amount of fats, as I'm typically consuming it about 60 to 90 minutes pre-training. Banana as the preferred fruit for its greater potassium, and of course the goated condiments of choice, cinnamon and salt. Now we cannot forget today's carbohydrate MVP, rice bubbles with a splash of almond milk. I keep refeeds super simple by adding low fat, low fibrous carbs, typically rice based, to ensure I'm not volumizing and adding too much GI distress. I'll repeat this meal again post training to assist with glycogen replenishment. Parcel? Yep, awesome, thanks man. Now this is actually comical and was not planned, but for context, a lot of individuals in prep develop some sort of guilty pleasure, and I'd be confident in saying it's usually in association with food. Scrolling the gram, watching cooking shows on Netflix, and creating a list of all the places they want to eat after their season. For me, it's literally internet shopping. I've been getting deliveries every few days and I've got no idea what's arriving. Here's me unwrapping a foldable cup I bought weeks back that I intend on traveling with for convenience. I mean, you got to admit, it's pretty damn cool. Alright, it is go time. Today's training is my second posterior chain day. I follow a rather unconventional program with 3 posterior and 2 anterior chain days, and each session including a combination of both upper and lower body. My intention being to improve overall prior weaknesses and balance my overall symmetry within the off season, which I've continued to run throughout my prep, because what builds it, retains it. But before we train, it's time to prepare the pre-workout nutrition. I'm a big fan of bulk nutrients non-stim pre, as it contains citrulline malate, beta-alanine and creatine monohydrate. Considering caffeine's long half-life, this affords me better control of my intake in proximation to sleep. The fruity goodness of Skittles alongside Powerade as my carbohydrates of choice. Sodium tablets to increase blood flow, and I mix my pre-workout with potassium-rich coconut water to improve intramuscular hydration.
Nails have been formed.
Alright guys, training and posing is complete and it's time for the post-workout cream of rice meal. Quick digesting carbs post-training to assist with glycogen replenishment. You can see I'm using the bulk nutrients Hasta WPI as this gives me confidence that it's batch tested and not cross-contaminated. Also, hot tip, 5:1 ratio of powder to boiling water, and make sure you use a metal whisk to combine your dry powder before mixing it in. Honestly, you'll thank me later. I then top with blueberries for fruit variety, YoPro for an additional serving of dairy, almond butter for some monounsaturated fats, and of course, you guessed it, cinnamon and salt. After this meal goes down, it's time for the final work block of the day, which involves completing any remaining athlete check-ins, programming, replying to emails, and responding to new athlete inquiries. From there, Nicole and I set off for our evening walk, which enables us to unwind from a busy workday and complete any remaining steps. Alright, quick physique check after the evening walk and a warm shower. It's interesting to see how some of today's carbohydrates have influenced the PM look. However, I would say here I'm still on the flatter side. Assessing my physique at multiple timestamps gives me the ability to better assimilate the upcoming peak week strategy, but no doubt I'm going to need more than a single day of loading to produce that full but tight show day look. Moving on to the last meal of the day, we have kangaroo, potato, spinach, and zucchini. Potato as a potassium-rich starch alongside spinach and zucchini for their low calorie and overall nutrient density. Throughout prep, I've maintained a source of red meat to ensure adequate iron and B12, as well as it being a fantastic high-protein, low-fat option. I tend to front-load majority of my carbohydrates to fuel the more active portion of my day, which means backloading more of my vegetable intake. But looking across the entirety of today's meals, you can see there's really minimal volumization or sugar-free diet foods. I'd much rather deal with the hunger than gastrointestinal discomfort that follows the abuse of these products. Contest prep involves embracing the discomfort of hunger and leaning into it. That said, I do enjoy washing this meal down with a Coke no sugar, and of course, opting for no caffeine. And finally, that wraps up the 5-week out prep day in the life. A massive heartfelt thank you to anyone who's shown support, whether it be through watching this video, listening to the Bodybuilding Down Under podcast, or simply reaching out in person or on social media. As you know, prep can be a very lonely endeavor unless you surround yourself with the right people. Looking forward to bringing it home and sharing more of the journey.